think it's a very interesting subject to talk about. And I would like to welcome all of you to my lecture. And after we finish, of course, you feel free if you would like to ask any questions. I'll be glad to try and answer most of your questions. Before we talk about religion in ancient Egypt, we need to have the correct definition of the word religion. What does it mean, religion, in general? Either in Egypt or anywhere else in the ancient time or in the modern time. Religion is something which enhances two things. It enhances the relationship between humans and God, or divine being. And this is the first thing. The second thing is to enhance the relationship among humans. Just give you an example. If we talk about, let's say, Christianity or Islam, you can practice your religion by going to the church or going to the mosque like 1,000 times a day. Yeah, this is the relationship between you and God. Yeah, which affects only you. But the other part of the religion, which is the relationship among humans, is how you act and react to the others in the community or in the society according to your religion. If your religion tells you not to steal, not to kill, not to cheat, not to lie, and so on, so this is enhancing the relationship between you and the others. The others could be members of your family, could be your neighbors, your colleagues, and so on. That's okay. She's coming. Hello.
Hello,
How are you? How are you doing? All right?
Yes, fine. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. Am I in your way?
No,
Have a seat. No, it's fine. Thank you.
Okay, so this is just
you like the door open or closed?
we can leave it open if it's noisy, we'll close. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So this is about religion in general. Now we talk about religion in ancient Egypt. Just to imagine life in Egypt or in ancient Egypt, we can have a quick look at the map of Egypt. I'm sure that you are all aware of the location of Egypt. Egypt is located mainly in Africa, covers an area of almost 1 million square kilometers, and about 90% of Egypt is located in Africa. Only 10%, which is Sinai, is in Asia. And by the way, this unique location helped a lot in building the civilization thousands of years ago. Egypt is the only country as a main link between the two continents, Asia and Africa, as shown here in the map. So from the north is the Mediterranean, from the east is the Red Sea, from the west is the Libyan Desert or the Sahara, and from the south, of course, is the Sudan. By looking at the map, we notice that more than 92% of the land of Egypt is desert. The fertile land of Egypt is about 8%. That's including actually the recently reclaimed land. So it was even less than this. And that actually formed a lot in the ancient society of Egypt. Let's say 20, 30,000 years ago, those who lived in Egypt, they were very much like cavemen. They were living in the desert, they were living in caves, they were traveling all around, they were hunting, they were looking for food and water, they were struggling for their life. Until something happened, changed completely the lifestyle in Egypt. What happened? The Great River Nile. You can see it in the middle of the map over there in blue. The Great River Nile started running from south to north. The main, or one of the main sources of the River Nile is Lake Victoria in Uganda and Tanzania, and the Nile is covering a distance of almost 4,100 miles to reach at the end the Mediterranean. So those who lived in Egypt, more or less like cavemen, realized that now, for a change, they have a current supply of water, so they don't need to travel around to look for water. Water, of course, is the most important element to survive. So now they have current supply of water. They can live by the banks of the River Nile, and they can start agriculture. Agriculture, I consider it the main step of civilization because it is teaching them stability. When you are cultivating the land, when you are farming crops, so obviously you will have to wait in the same place, waiting for the harvest. So they've learned to be more stable, not like Bedouins or nomadic people traveling all around looking for food or for animals or whatever. So when they started learning agriculture and they started dwelling by the River Nile, they left their caves in the mountains and they started building shelters. Yeah? I always say that the Egyptian civilization started step by step. So they were living in caves or in tents, let's say, in the desert, and then they started moving to build houses, yeah, or shelters. Everything from now on will be related closely to the River Nile. Yeah? So what is the material would they use for building their shelters or houses? The clay of the Nile, yeah? The Nile silt. They get it, make bricks, dry it in the heat of the sun. It's too hot here, very strong sun, so it dries in the heat of the sun, and then they use it in building shelters or what we call mud huts. Okay. They were expecting every year in the summer, around the second half of July, the Nile comes in a great inundation, destroying their houses, washing away their villages and so on. But anyway, they had to live as close as to the River Nile because it's the main source of water. Until today, the main source of water in Egypt is the Nile. Yeah? Okay, fine. After a while, they realized that there is something wrong. What's wrong? In Egypt, they had everything they wanted. They had water, so obviously they had food, they had animals, they had birds, they had fertile land, stability, wealth, everything. But what was wrong? They noticed that sooner or later, they will die. Everybody will die. And their life will come to an end. So they had a major question. What happens when we die? The answer to the question was, we are coming back. So here we understand a very important fact about ancient Egypt, that coming back to a second life, which will be eternal life, so it is more important than the first life. The first life you will have here on earth is for a short period of time, 50, 100, 150, 500 years, whatever, yeah? Sooner or later, we will die. And after death, we will come back, but for a second life, and the second life will be eternal, so it is more important than the first life. That's why they spent most of their first life preparing for the second life. And I always talk to people and say, well, you guys in Egypt, the ancient Egyptians, they were very boring. Why boring? Because you take us guys to show us only tombs and temples, what we call ABT, another bloody temple. Yeah? When you come and visit Egypt, you only visit the ancient monuments, temples or tombs. But why? Why don't we visit palaces or castles? Yeah? Like in Europe or in the UK, whatever. Why? Because they didn't care much about the first life. Was that because they were boring? They were all thinking of death? No. Because they noticed that this life is limited and sooner or later will come to an end, so they need to focus on their second life. Fine. Second life. What do we need for the second life? We need the same body. We need the body again. Yeah? So they worked on preserving the body by mummification. This is why mummification. Okay. Where do we put the mummies? They noticed that after they had the normal burial at the very beginning of the Egyptian civilization, they noticed that the animals, especially dogs and wild dogs in the desert, they come and dig and eat or destroy the fresh corpse. Yeah? Fine. So they need to mummify it. They need to secure it as well by building what? what we call the house of eternity. What is the house of eternity in our own language today? Tombs. Yeah? Building tombs. Or they call it the houses of eternity. This is where they live eternal in the afterlife. Fine. Okay. What else? It's like a journey. What will happen after death, it's like a journey. Journey from the first life to the second life. Okay. When you take a journey, when you travel from a country to another, when you go on a holiday or you go for business, what do? Let's say you're coming to visit Egypt. So you need to gather some information about the country. You get a guidebook, you ask some friends being there, what to take with me to Egypt, what is suitable, what about the weather, climate of Egypt, yeah? What about the community? We're going to an Islamic country, so is it okay for foreigners to dress up like in Europe or in the States? Do we have to cover the head? What, can we wear shorts? And all these common questions. You need to know all about this, yeah? Okay. And most preferably, you need to take a guide. When you want to tour Egypt, you hire a guide to take you around, okay? And you need also security in the country to secure you when you are wandering around, okay? In ancient Egypt, they wanted also a guide to guide them to the afterlife. They wanted someone to secure their journey to the afterlife. Do we all agree? Yeah. Excellent. This is just a little introduction to what we're going to see now. So they started thinking of worshipping supreme beings. Yeah, I wouldn't call them gods now. Like in the rest of Africa, in Latin America, and many other parts of the world, at the time they started forming what we call the totems. Yeah, it's very common in Africa. Even it looks very African. And I was a couple of years ago in the States, in west, near the west coast, and I've seen places in the middle of nowhere, like in the state of Wyoming, which was one of the bases for the Indian Americans, and I found something identical. I took a picture of it. I couldn't find it in my gallery, but honestly, it's exactly the same. Very similar. Of course, if you go to a place like the British Museum in London, the African section, you'll find many of these statues of the totems used by many of the African tribes thousands of years ago. So that was the beginning of the idea of worshipping supreme beings. Where from they got this idea? Because they lived in tribal communities, so they had tribes. And each tribe would have a chief and a wise man. Sometimes it could be the same person, sometimes it could be two different people, yeah? So the wise man, or later the priest, will, in the big festivals, religious festivals and ceremonies, will wear a mask. And this mask will be from the nature where they live. So it will be a mask of a bird or an animal, like a falcon, a cow, and so on. So here I got this picture, the same one of the totem, and the other one to the right-hand side, the lady with the wings, with a little feather on the top of her head, is one of the most famous gods of ancient Egypt, the goddess of justice, goddess Ma'at, the goddess of justice. I'll tell you a story about Ma'at later on when we talk briefly about the main and the major gods of Egypt. Okay, so by then, and we're talking roughly about 5000 BC, 5000 BC, when Egypt was a bit developed, when they learned agriculture, when they started building houses and so on, when they started believing in supreme beings or gods, when they built tombs, they thought of building tombs on the West Bank and cities on the East Bank. Why? Because they noticed that every day the sun rises on the east, and they can follow the journey of the sun, traveling from east to west for the 12 hours of the day, and then the sun sets behind the mountains of the west, disappears. But the following morning, they find the sun is born again in the sky. and then traveling again from east to west. Okay, they said this is exactly what will happen to us. We live here on Earth. When we die, it's like the sun god or the solar disk, and then we will be born again for a second life. So they considered the east bank of the River Nile the side of the living, while the west bank was the side of the dead. This is why they built their houses, their villages, their cities on the east bank. And they built their tombs, their necropolis on the west bank. There are some exceptions when the land didn't allow them to build tombs on the west bank. They had exception, like in a place called El.meniawy in Middle Egypt, they built the tombs on the east bank. That's an exception. Yeah? But we talk about, generally speaking, they built their tombs or the necropolis on the west bank. Fine. Also, Egypt was divided into two halves, as shown here in the map. The north of Egypt, which is towards the Mediterranean, includes here Cairo, Alexandria, the Delta, and so on, is known as Lower Egypt. The south, Luxor, Aswan, and so on, is known as Upper Egypt. Why upper and lower? Remember? Remember? That
Yeah, the river flows.
the river, excuse. The river flows from south to north, so we expect the land of the south to be higher or upper than the land of the north. Okay, as I told you earlier on, that everything will be close related to the river line. Okay, fine. So each one of those two kingdoms, I call them the kingdoms of Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt, two kingdoms. Each one of them would have a king and a flag and also a protecting goddess. Right, so I mentioned here the colors of the two kingdoms. The north will be red, the south will be white. Fine. Before we talk about the crowns, why red in Lower Egypt, why white in Upper Egypt? Because that will be the color of the crown as we will see here. These are the two crowns, yeah? They are different in shapes, but they are also different in colors. White was the red crown for Lower Egypt, and why white crown for Upper Egypt? Because in Upper Egypt, it's mostly desert. When you go down to Upper Egypt, visit Luxor, Aswan, if you do a Nile cruise, and you see the very narrow strip by the River Nile, it's very green. But if you leave this Nile Valley, which is stretching for about like, let's say, maximum of 1 mile, you find yourself in the desert, either Eastern Desert or Western Desert. That's the popular color. It's very dry in Upper Egypt. Never say never, but you can easily say it never rains in Upper Egypt. Yeah? So you get yourself in the desert, like in the Western Desert or in the Eastern Desert. So the popular color is the color of the sand, which is white or light yellow. Okay? While if you go down to Lower Egypt, in the Delta, we do have two branches today of the Nile forming the Delta, but thousands of years ago there were 7 branches spreading all over the area of North Egypt, so making the land fertile. So the color of the soil, because of the Nile silt, is reddish or brownish, yeah, because of the Nile silt. So the popular color in Lower Egypt was the color of the silt, which is reddish. So that's why red in Lower Egypt, white in Upper Egypt. Fine. So from there they got the colors of the crowns. But also remember that the crowns were different in shapes. But most of the time when you go to visit temples or tombs and you see the kings wearing those crowns, you don't see them colored. Colors are lost or so. Yeah? But you can easily identify which is which by looking at the shape of the crown. Okay? So now we have 2 kingdoms, 2 crowns, 2 kings, 2 gods, and so on. What do we expect? War. Of course. Yeah? A civil war between the Upper Egyptians and Lower Egyptians. We believe that they should be united and they should be one kingdom. So they were fighting each other, starting from 5000 BC until they managed to have finally a kingdom, united kingdom of the Upper Egyptians and Lower Egyptians, when the Upper Egyptians, the south, managed to invade the north and destroyed them, and they built their kingdom, which would be known as the Kingdom of Upper and Lower Egypt. That king was called King Narmer or King Menes, and he was the first king to wear what is known as the double crown. He said that I'm not anymore the king of Upper Egypt, I'm the king of the two lands. Yeah? The king of Upper and Lower Egypt, so I'm not going to wear the single crown, I will the double crown. And they invented this crown by placing the white crown inside the red. By placing the white crown inside the red one to create what is known as the double crown. We talk about the local gods or the protecting gods of Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. We have Nekhbet and Wajid. Okay, the one to the left over there is Nekhbet, which is a female eagle, the vulture. While the one on the right hand side, the Wajid, was the cobra. Okay, why? Why Upper Egypt got the vulture and why Lower Egypt got the cobra? In Upper Egypt, until today, it's the best place for bird watching. If you are into bird watching, no doubt, you go to Aswan. Yeah, best place for bird watching is Aswan. Why? Because it's warm, it's clean, and less polluted. So it's attracting most of the birds coming from Europe migrating to Africa in the winter. Yeah? Most of European tourists to Egypt, when they go to Aswan, say, this bird is from where we live. Yeah, in England or all that. In the winter, usually this time of the year, December and January is the best time for bird watching in Aswan. Okay? So the ancient Egyptians noticed the same thing thousands of years ago. They were great observers. They were sitting, watching what's happening. Okay. So they've chosen the strongest of them all, the bravest, the vulture, to become the protecting goddess of Upper Egypt. Fine. In Lower Egypt, what do we have? We have the delta. We have the marshes of the delta, where they grow different crops, mainly papyrus. Yeah? Marshes. And they have lots of snakes. So they've chosen the most deadly and the most dangerous of all, which is the cobra. Okay? Are you following? Excellent. Here there are some pictures of the vulture and the cobra. This is the eye of Horus. It's a piece of jewelry, amazing one with the two. Always, when they were talking about the king, they stressed on the fact that the king is the lord of the two lands, the king of the united kingdom of Upper and Lower Egypt, never the king of Egypt. Yeah. Here are the two ladies as well, Nekhbet and Wajid. They were I need some. We'll get some cheese. They come here as a human figure, like two ladies, and each one of them is wearing its crown, the red crown or the white crown, as you can see. Yeah. This is a tomb picture, but the one to the left hand side is from one of the famous temples, the temple of Komombo near Aswan. Beautiful carving, of course. We might talk another session about art in ancient Egypt, the beauty of the art in one of the Greco-Roman temples of Upper Egypt. Fine. When we talk about religion, we have also to mention the different theories of religion, how they try to explain the beginning of civilization, beginning of creation, and so on. So one of the theories was One of the most famous gods ever being worshipped in Egypt was the sun god Ra. God Ra was the sun god, and you can see him here in the form of a falcon-headed god with the solar disk on the top of his head, with the cobra also surrounding the solar disk. So, according to that story or that legend, they mentioned that the god Ra was the creator who created himself and then created god Shu and goddess Tefnut. God Shu was the god of air, and god Shu was the goddess of the rain. So they got married. And god Shu and Tefnut had a son and a daughter. The son was god Geb, the god of earth, and the daughter was the goddess Nut, the goddess of sky. Okay? It might not be very clear when we talk about them this way, but I will give more explanation coming soon. So Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky, were married. Yes? Yeah, they were married. And we'll see how they were married. And then the god Shu, the god of the wind, or god of air, came in between them trying to split them up. Call it the Big Bang. Yeah? Right? But when they were married, they had 4 children. Yeah? Osiris, Isis, a boy and a girl, Set and Nephthys, a boy and a girl. So each 2 of them got married. Isis and Osiris made a couple. Set and Nephthys made another couple. Okay? You following? Okay. That's one of the theories. The other one is talking about 4 pairs of gods. 4 males and 4 females. Nun, Nunet. Hu, Huhet. Ku, Kuket, and finally Amun and Amunet. Okay? That's not very famous. By the way, it's called Ashmolean, not the Ashmolean in Oxford in England. But by the way, who's from England here? I know many of you. You know, I've been to the Ashmolean Museum. It's a beautiful one. If you really want to enjoy looking at a great collection of Egyptian artifacts, and I find it more amazing than the British Museum itself.
Really?
Yeah. The Ashmolean is in Oxford University.
Yeah.
It's in the university.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So Ashmolean means number 8 in the ancient language, because as you see, there are 8 gods. Not very different from the other one of Ra, but anyway, this is how they try to explain. So I got you a picture of God Geb and Nut. Who's been to the tombs in the Valley of the Kings? Yeah, the tombs in the Valley of the Kings. In most of them, the well-preserved ones, in the burial chamber, the ceiling is well decorated with mainly a blue scene, which is the color of the sky at night. Yeah, I think I have a picture here. Okay. So, but I wanted to show you this first because it shows also God Shu, who's lifting up the body of Nut, trying to lift her up, splitting her up from the god of earth, God Geb. Okay. Here, this is the famous one you see in most of the tombs in the Valley of the Kings. And you notice that the lady Nut, goddess Nut, is like stretching her body like this. And she's touching earth from one side with her hands, from the other side with her feet. If you look at this picture, you can see here in front of her mouth a reddish dot or something like that. Yeah? This is the solar disk. They said that goddess Nut is swallowing the solar disk at the sunset. So the solar disk is traveling inside her body for the 12 hours of the night. And look at the color inside her body is like yellowish, which is the daylight, while outside is dark. Yeah? And then she's giving birth between her legs. You can see another red dot which is the rebirth of the solar disk, the rebirth of the sun god, which is the sunrise. So sunset and sunrise. And I always talk to some of my friends and say, well, you guys believe that the ancient Egyptian civilization was built by aliens. And say, well, the Egyptian pyramids and so on were built by aliens coming from Mars or whatever. Yeah? But when you look at something like this, you think that aliens will come here, explain that phenomenon of the sunrise and sunset in their childish way?
Yeah.
This is how they saw it, actually. This is how they were living here, watching every morning the sun rises, being born, and then it disappears. Where did it go? It goes to the underworld. This is why they build the tombs on the West Bank, and they believe that every day we will be traveling 24 hours, 12 hours of the day, from east to west towards the sun, and then when the sun sets, when it disappears, we will be traveling on our own in the 12 hours of the night, from west to east, until we meet the sun god the following morning for the sunrise, and we are protected, and so on, and so on, and so on. Yeah? So the second life I told you before, or the eternal life, is not going to start immediately after death, but they are going to spend some time, could be short, could be long, in their tomb, until they are invited for the judgment day, we'll talk about later, for judging them according to what they've done in the first life. This is another good picture of goddess Nut, and this particularly from the temple of Dendera. Temple of Dendera is north of Luxor, one of the most beautiful temples in Egypt, and that's on the ceiling of the shrine of goddess Nut. Beautiful carving, amazing, honestly, and the color is still vivid until today. Okay, so here we can see a scene showing the king accompanied by Osiris and Isis. If we talk about the legend of Isis and Osiris, I would like to go back to this one. The legend of Isis and Osiris is the heart of the Egyptian mythology. The heart of the Egyptian mythology. If we understand the legend, we can understand most of the Egyptian mythology. Okay. Now we have 4 gods, or semi-gods. Semi-human, semi-gods. 2 boys, 2 girls. They got married to each other, and they lived in peace until something happened. So the boys got fighting each other, and then the bad one, Set, decided to kill the good one, Osiris. Have you heard this before? Somewhere, yeah? Adam and Eve, yeah? Cain and Abel, very much similar. Very much similar. So Set decided to kill Osiris. How to kill him without being suspected, bearing in mind that he's the only man on earth, yeah? After killing his brother. He said that I have to be smart, and he designed a coffin with the measurements of his brother Osiris, and he invited the 2 sisters and the brother and the other creatures in Egypt to a nice party, claiming that he would like to be a good brother. Everyone was happy, they were eating, drinking, and so on until they got drunk. So he said, okay, he brought the sarcophagus or the coffin, asking them to try it one by one. If it fits one of them, he or she will take it as a gift. Excuse me. Most the sarcophagus is a nice gift. You are invited to a party and someone, your host is saying, try the sarcophagus, try the coffin. If you like it, take it. Yes, maybe not to us. Doesn't sound good to us when you talk about it today. But to them, it was very important. Yeah? Because this guy is building me a tomb. He's building my house of eternity. So he's appreciated. This guy is giving me or making me a coffin which will protect my body for the afterlife. Thank you very much. So it's better than buying him a car or giving him money, because all this goes for the first life. It's vanishing life. But when somebody is doing you something for the afterlife, this is the best thing. Thank you very much. That's why the builders of the tombs of the Valley of the Kings, they were highly appreciated. So they were given the permission to build their own tombs in the Valley of the Workers, which are maybe, in my opinion, more beautiful and much better than the tombs of the kings. Yeah? That's my opinion. Yeah? So everyone tried the sarcophagus. It fits one of them. It was tailor-made for Osiris. So I said, thank you. That's good. Osiris was almost drunk. So the evil brother got the heavy lead, covered the sarcophagus, pushed in the water took it far away and disappeared. 60, 70 years later, the faithful wife Isis realized that the husband was missing. Good that she noticed. And then she finally decided to look for the body. She went here and there. To cut the long story short, she found the sarcophagus, tried to wake him up. Darling, didn't move. Hello, didn't answer. Went to God Ra. What happened to my husband? He told her, her husband is dead, I'm sorry, and so on. Okay, what should I do now? Mummify his body. I cannot do the mummification. Yeah? He said, I will assign someone to be in charge of mummification, the god Anubis, the black jackal. Why? Because he was the strongest and the most violent dog among those other creatures attacking the tombs or the bodies. So he said, okay, this one will be the god of mummification. He's the one who will teach you, Isis, to mummify your husband. Okay, did the mummification, worked very well, and did the mummification, and then she put the mummy in the same coffin hidden among the papyri stems in the marshes of the delta and so on. Set, the evil brother, was hunting one day in the delta where he found the sarcophagus. Oh my God, this is the one of my brother. If I leave it like this, then he will come back to the afterlife. He will tell the gods about what I've done to him in the afterlife. I'll be punished, and then I'll, okay, what should I do? Evil. He is the god of evil. Yeah? He said, okay, I'll destroy the body. He got a sharp knife, start chopping the body in pieces, scattering them far and wide all over the country, making it impossible, or at least difficult, for anybody to recognize the members of the body. The legend was written on a very long period of time and was modified several times. So if you read the different versions of it, they will tell you that there were 14 pieces in one version, 16 pieces in another version, and 42 in a third version. 14, 16, they are quite similar. But why the number jumped to 42? Ah, politics. That's a political influence here. Why? Because Egypt was divided geographically into 42 provinces, 42 states, 42 counties. Yeah? And each one of them wanted to gain the honor that they found a member of the body of Osiris in their land. Have you heard of a place called Abydos in Egypt? Abydos originally from the word Abidu, which means the place of the head. They claim that the head of Osiris was found there. For example, Philae in Aswan, they claim that the left leg of Osiris was found there, and so on. Okay. So they believe that Isis, of course, had to collect the body, and she found one member was missing, which was his manhood. And of course, we understand why this one is missing, because the evil brother took this one in particular, threw it in the Nile, so the fish in the Nile ate it to make sure that he will never exist the afterlife, he will never have children. Okay, anyway, they believe that for him to come back, Osiris, and later on any one of us, to come back for the afterlife, they believe in the resurrection. In the resurrection of Osiris and the resurrection of any one of us. So that picture taken from the temple of Abydos, Abidu, one of the most beautiful. I know that most people don't go there now, but it's one of the most beautiful, highly recommended. The temple of Seti I, the father of Ramses II, in Abydos, beautiful colors. If you enjoyed the colors of the Valley of the Kings, the tombs and so on, so we're talking about more or less the same quality. More or less. In a temple, it's amazing. In a tomb, yes, because the tombs are enclosed and well preserved and so on. But when you see this quality of art in a temple, amazing. So here you see, Seti I is holding like a pillar. This is what we call the Jed pillar. What is the Jed pillar? It's the backbone of Osiris. For anybody to stand up, You need a backbone, yeah, to lift you up, yeah. So that's the symbol of resurrection of Osiris. So he, Seth the First, is handling the jet pillar of Osiris to his wife Isis, because the king is representing the god. So any of the Egyptian kings, any of the pharaohs, was Horus the falcon in his first life when he was alive, the strong Horus. When he is dead, then he will become form of Osiris, the first dead god. Yeah. Osiris, what happened to him? When he came back to the afterlife, the god Ra said, I will assign him to be the god of the afterlife, the god of the judgment day. He will be the judge, will judge all of us in the afterlife according to what we've done in our first life. You see if we were good or bad, and then he will decide for us, either we'll be sent to heaven eternally or we'll be sent to hell eternally. Okay? This scene is also from Abydos. It shows here a falcon head got to the left. Can you see it? Yeah? That's not Horus, the son of Isis and Osiris, but this is what we call Horus the Elder. Horus the Elder, the uncle of Horus. It's a bit complicated. Don't worry about this now. But here you can see a unique scene. You see a bird here. Can you see a bird? It's not very clear, but okay, the bird, yeah. And you can see a body laying down. Okay. Here is the manhood of this guy. So who's this guy? Osiris. Yeah? Who's the bird? No? Isis. Thank you very much. Isis, his wife, the lady. Yeah? The lady Isis. It's okay.
Oh, there it goes again.
The lady Isis, this one here, is coming in the form of a bird, yeah, flying over his body to receive his seeds, okay, to give birth to Horus. So some people say, why Horus is a falcon? His mom and dad were like humans. Horus was a falcon because his mother turned to a bird when she made love to his father Osiris, who was already dead. This is very important here. So we're talking about something called the divine birth. The divine birth of Horus, which will affect a lot in ancient Egypt and later in other religions. The divine birth. Horus was the divine child of Osiris and Isis. This picture, beautiful statue from